The problem that we have now is 88 to 93% of American adults, according to whatever studies you want to look at, but somewhere around there, of these adults are metabolically inflexible. They're metabolically unhealthy. They're sugar burners. They're essentially in a keto deficiency. They've forgotten how to burn fat and use ketones. So they really need this metabolic process. We got to shift them to a different direction, start burning fat.
Welcome to the Dr. Ashley Show.
Welcome to the Dr. Ashley Show. I'm Dr. Ashley, and today I am excited for you to hear from my guest, Ben Azadi. In 2008, Ben was an obese man who went through a personal transformation of releasing 80 pounds of extra fat weight and getting metabolically healthy. Ever since, Ben has been on a mission to help 1 billion people live a healthier lifestyle. Ben has over 15 years of experience in the health industry, and he's the author of 4 best-selling books, including his latest, Keto Flex. Ben has been the go-to resource for intermittent fasting and the ketogenic diet since 2013. He is known as the health detective because he investigates dysfunction and he educates, not medicates, to bring the body back to normal function. Ben is the founder of Keto Camp, a global brand bringing awareness to ancient healing strategies such as the keto diet and fasting. Ben is the host of a top 15 podcast, the Keto Camp podcast, which won Keto Podcast of the Year in 2022 by the Metabolic Health Summit. Ben has the fast-growing Keto Camp YouTube channel with over 200,000 subscribers and TikTok channel with over 330,000 subscribers and over 50 million video views. Ben is a keynote speaker who delivered a keynote lecture for KetoCon in 2022, 23, and 24. And he's been featured in Forbes, LA Weekly, Disrupt Magazine, New York Times Magazine, LA Entertainment Weekly, and other publications. Welcome to the show, Ben. It is an honor to have you here. Thank you so much for spending your afternoon with us.
I'm honored to be here. Big fan of your work. You were on my podcast a year ago, or actually over a year ago, and we had a great time. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, I would love to start with you just sharing a bit about your transformational story. I know your story is inspiring. It's going to motivate a lot of us. So if you just start with that, and I'd love to understand what the key turning points were that led you to embrace a new lifestyle.
Yeah, so many of us have our stories, and we might be actually in that story right now in terms of like the pain. For me, I was very unhealthy growing up, followed a standard American diet, and we both know how heavily processed and toxic the standard American diet is. It includes a lot of toxic foods like seed oils and processed sugar and highly palatable foods. And that got me as a kid. My mom actually worked at Kentucky Fried Chicken when I was a young boy, and she would bring me home Kentucky Fried Chicken. And I thought she was the best mom ever, right? Fried chicken most nights. And there were some nights I remember my mom would not bring home Kentucky Fried Chicken. I would say, Mom, what's up with that? Why didn't you bring it home any chicken? And she would tell me, well, I only bring it to you the first week they change the cooking oils, but they don't change it for until 12 to 14 days until the oil turns so black. So on those days, she didn't bring it to me. Isn't that crazy? Like back then, I didn't think much of it, but now that I think about this story, it's like 14 days until they change the oil, they refried and refried. Oh my God. We'll talk more about the problem with that. But I was very unhealthy. My environment was toxic. So if my environment was toxic, that means I had toxic thoughts. And if I had toxic thoughts, that means I had toxic behaviors, and then so on and so forth. So I was very unhealthy. I was obese as a kid, physically, obese mentally, depressed, and suicidal. And nothing really changed for me until I was 24 years old. And this was a pinnacle moment of my life because I was rock bottom. And I know a lot of people listening have experienced their own rock bottom version, or you might be in rock bottom right now. And there's something beautiful about being rock bottom. And I say that because there's another direction in the opposite direction. As far down as you might be or might have been in, like I was, I started to understand that, man, I'm hurting every day. At this point in my life, I was 250 pounds. I was inflamed. My entire body was inflamed. I felt like I was on fire. Low back pain. I had to wear a knee brace just to walk around the shopping mall for more than an hour because my knees were so inflamed. And I was ready to check out. And what I mean by that is I was actually on the internet looking for ways to end my life. That was my easy solution to the suffering. At least I thought it was the easy solution. But I stopped myself, and the only reason I stopped myself was actually because of my mother and because of how much I loved her, and I still love her to this day. And I didn't want to cause that pain for my mom. I kept thinking about, if I took my life, my mom would be in so much pain and she would suffer so much. And I did not want to do that to my mother. That was the only thing that stopped me from pursuing that. But it was a dark moment in my life. I was getting all this conflicting information when it comes to health and nutrition. Now it's even worse, and I didn't know where to start, but I knew I needed to make a change. So this is the point in my life where I started to get into books. I started to read books from authors like Dr. Wayne Dyer, and his books made a huge difference for me. I remember reading his books and reading different lines that he would say in his books. Like one of the lines I remember reading was, "Hey, if you keep blaming other people for your problems," which I was doing, by the way, he said, "you would have to hire a psychiatrist for the rest of the world in order for you to get better." And I was thinking, damn, isn't that the truth? And he would say things like, "Hey, when you squeeze an orange, what comes out? Orange juice. Why is that? Because that's what's inside. When life squeezes you and applies pressure, what comes out is what's inside, your thoughts, your emotions, your feelings, and your actions." And I started to think, wow, if I could change my thoughts and my emotions, the pressure that I was getting, what will come out will be something magnificent. I could create something great because that's what's going to be inside of me. And then I got into Bob Proctor and Tony Robbins and all these other incredible authors. But the bottom line is the books helped change my perspective about things. I changed the narrative. I changed the story. It helped me take responsibility. And I do believe that is the first step to great change, is taking responsibility. And that word responsibility gets lost on a lot of people. To me, that is our ability to respond to life, is our responsibility. And my ability to respond to life at that point, Ashley, was very poor. So my results were poor. So I figured if I could change my ability to respond to life and my circumstances, I could change my results. And that's exactly what happened. 9 months later, I went from 250 pounds to 170 pounds. I went from 34% body fat all the way down to 6% body fat, completely changed my physical appearance. But the reason I'm sharing this with your audience is because what it did for my mental health and what it did for this mental six pack. And it really reprogrammed my mind for health and vitality and success in all areas. And that was the starting point for me to enter the health and wellness space. That was 16 years ago. And ever since then, I've been a student and a teacher and a student. I've been learning and relearning and unlearning, etc. And I just love learning. I love teaching. And it's something that I'm very passionate about. That's why I'm excited to chat with you today. So I hope that inspires your audience, because if I could do that, somebody who had a broken metabolism, who was obese, ready to give up on life, to becoming healthy and actually turning it into a passion and a purpose, then anybody could do it too.
Yeah, that's an amazing story. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
I think 80% of any change comes from the mind. And dropping weight and keeping it off is one of the biggest changes and transformations that we can make in our life. And you said something that I haven't heard before, but you said you were obese mentally. Can you share with us what that means to you and what that looks like? And then you shared that the first step was taking responsibility. I'd love to hear how you actually did that. What were the first steps? How did you start to retrain those thoughts that are in such a pattern?
Great questions. And I know a lot of what I just shared and what I'm about to share is what you teach in your programs too. That's why I love chatting with you, because I agree. The mindset is at least 80% of the equation, if not more, right? Mental obesity, right? When we look at physical obesity, we know that Harvard is predicting that by the year 2030, 50% of the adult population in America will be obese. That's what they're projecting. But I don't think we have an obesity problem because of what people are eating per se. I think we have an obesity problem because of what's eating them. They're not living on purpose with their purpose. Like I was. I was lost in life. And when you're lost in life and you're not clear on your purpose and you don't have a strong why, you're going to fill that with voids. You're going to fill it with bad behaviors, and you're going to end up becoming mentally obese like I was. And that is going to take place before you become physically obese. And Robert Heinlein said something really, really great. He said, in the absence of clearly defined goals, we become strangely loyal to performing daily trivia until ultimately we become enslaved by it. So daily trivia is food addiction, drug addiction, porn addiction. I mean, whatever it is. And that's because we lack goals. We're not clear on our goals. So for me, I started to become clear on my goals, and I didn't have time for video game addiction, which I had. I didn't have time for food addiction, which I had. I didn't have time for a toxic environment, which I also had, because my goals started to become clear to me. So that I believe is so important, to have purpose and passion in your life. And it sounds cliche, but it really is a guiding post towards everything you want in life, not just health and nutrition. And it does start with the responsibility part. The second you take responsibility is the second you stop being the victim of your history and you start to become the victor of your destiny, and you are in control. You are the movie star instead of the backup actor or the extra in the movie. Like, you are the star, you are the director. You could create whatever you want to create. It is your movie. It is your story that you create. And that starts with responsibility. I think we live in a world now, especially in the United States, where it's easy to be the victim and think that your genes are the reason why you have autoimmune or why you're obese. That is not taking responsibility. That is playing the victim card. And that's where I was, but that's somewhere I'm never going to be again.
Will you give an example of what a victim thought is versus what the victor version of it would be?
Yes. A victim thought would be like, for example, when I had the victim thoughts, like, of course I'm 250 pounds, I would tell myself, because my mom brought me Kentucky Fried Chicken my entire childhood, so she destroyed my metabolism. Of course I am obese. My dad has diabetes. He's overweight. I have his genetics. Of course I'm obese. My mom wants me to eat all her food, even if it's not healthy, because that's her way of showing love to me. And it's enabling me. So these are ways to cop out and not take responsibility versus, wait a minute, yeah, genetics play a role, but there's something called epigenetics, and I actually have more control over my genes than my genes have control over me. I could actually have communication with my mom and set boundaries and let her know that I'm not going to eat certain foods. Like, that is the difference between a victim mindset and a victor mindset.
Mm-hmm. So you're the author of your own story. You always have the power of agency, the power of choice. And that's what I see in our clients too. Those who drop weight and keep it off have no excuses, no procrastinations. They've committed to themselves. And I find that all of the people around them, well, most of them benefit as a result as well. Do you feel like your transformation allowed for your community of people to up level, and those who didn't support you realized just weren't the best for you in your life, and you could say farewell in a compassionate way?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Because either you're going to adapt to them or they're going to adapt to you. Something interesting happens when you walk with somebody. Either they keep up with your pace or you keep up with theirs.
That's right.
And it's the same thing with like your environment, with your friends and your family. So absolutely. And that was actually one of the most difficult parts as I was going through my transformation, because I had friends who started to become threatened by me, even family members, when I started to make these changes. And I know that you've seen that too. When you change, you become a threat to people in your life who don't make those same changes. And it's not because they really want harm to you or they want you to be unhappy or unhealthy. It's because it's easier for you to stay at that vibration and them not to change than it is for them to accept these changes. Because if you start to say, I'm not going to drink anymore, I'm not going to go out and party anymore, they're not going to take that with like a supportive, like, yeah, good job. Like, at least most people won't. So they're either going to adapt to your changes or you're going to adapt to them, or you're going to set those, you're going to cut people out of your life. And that was the most difficult part of my life, because people didn't accept my changes. They didn't want to adapt. And that's where you make the difficult choices to say, like, they're not serving me anymore. They're drainers instead of chargers. And I want chargers in my life. And then you automatically start to bring those people into your life. You know, the term, your vibe attracts your tribe. So true. Your vibration you put out there, people will start to come in your life and these pieces start to come together. And then all of a sudden, you have your tribe of people who are on that same vibration of you.
Yeah, that's great. Your environment's always stronger than any willpower, right? So if you continue to surround yourself by people who bring you down, it's just real difficult to make positive change in your life.
Damn near impossible.
Yeah. Yeah. Will you share with us, from a nutrition perspective, changing topics a little bit, how you feel about the ketogenic diet, where you are with things right now? I think, if I understand your story, you dove into the ketogenic diet to help you drop this weight. I'd love to hear a little bit about just the basics. If you could share with us the basics of what a keto diet is, and then what you think about it from a health perspective, because I know there's a lot of controversy around it. If you feel like we should stay in the ketogenic state all the time, if we should cycle in and out. I'd love your perspectives on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this topic. It's it's something that I love talking about. It's a very popular topic. When I lost my original weight in 2008, I didn't do it with keto. I didn't know about keto back then. I did it pretty aggressively. And I learned a lesson because although I lost all the weight and I was shredded, I had a physical six pack, I was still not healthy. I still had digestive issues, some acne, and brain fog. And that's when I was still exploring what true health felt like. And I did a vegan diet for a year and a half in 2012, did not work well for me. And then in 2013, I started to not discover, but come across work about a ketogenic diet. And of course, Mark Sisson, who we were just talking about offline, had some info about it. My mentor, Dr. Pompa, had some info about it, and then some others like Dave Asprey and Mercola. It wasn't a lot of people talking about it. So it was fascinating to me because I started to research keto. And what I discovered is that ketosis is more of a metabolic process than it is a diet. Now, a diet could get you into ketosis, but the reason that is important because it's been around forever. This metabolic process of ketosis has been around for as long as humans have existed. And it made sense to me that our ancestors all tapped into this metabolic process of ketosis, of burning fat instead of sugar. But they didn't stay there forever. They had the carbs and they would burn sugar when they could and they needed to, and they would burn fat and use ketones when they needed to. And they kind of went back and forth. So this is that concept of metabolic flexibility that Mark Sisson talks about. And I do believe that's the way that we're designed to live our lives. The problem that we have now is 88 to 93% of American adults, according to whatever studies you want to look at, but somewhere around there, of these adults are metabolically inflexible. They're metabolically unhealthy. They're sugar burners. They're essentially in a keto deficiency. They've forgotten how to burn fat and use ketones. So they really need this metabolic process. We got to shift them to a different direction, start burning fat. But then we have a new problem with people in the keto space who have been doing keto and seeing all the benefits, and now they're only burning fat, only using ketones long term, and that's not good either. So we want a healthy balance of burning fat, burning sugar, using whatever substrates that are available, and you want to be really efficient. You want to have healthy mitochondria to go back and forth and use whatever is available. So I love keto as a tool, but I'm not one of the dogmatic people out there in the keto space saying you should all be doing keto. Men and women, I believe, do it differently. Women of different ages do it differently. Ketosis is a stress to your mitochondria. And it's not that stress is bad for you. It's only bad for you when your body doesn't adapt to it. Stress is vital for health and vitality as long as you're adapting to it. So when you're in a state of ketosis, it's signaling times are tough to your mitochondria. Short term, this is amazing because the mitochondria get stronger. They end up duplicating through mitochondrial biogenesis. So you have a huge increase in ATP energy production, over 400% increase in energy because of this mitochondrial biogenesis process. But if you stay in ketosis too long, now all of a sudden the benefits go away and you start to hurt yourself. So I love it as a tool, but it's not the only tool, and we got to use it wisely.
So let's say you have a 50-year-old woman who has been obese. She's dropped the weight. She's keeping it off. What would be a good way for her to, what should be her eating style?
So she's 50 years old. She's a woman.
Mm-hmm.
She was obese and she's lost the weight, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
I would ask if she is in menopause yet or not. If she's still having a cycle, even if it's irregular, she's probably close to menopause. And I would, for this unique situation, I would focus heavily on the adrenal glands more than anything else, because now, that's when the ovaries start to shut down and retire. The adrenal glands pick up the slack for a lot of the work. So we would focus on looking at heart rate variability to see what her baseline is.
Mm-hmm.
And using heart rate variability, I would use that as a gauge for how aggressively I want to do keto with her and how much fasting and different stressors I want to do. If I see a good HRV and it's trending in the right direction, I could get her into ketosis. She could get the amazing benefits of what it does for the brain and everything else. But if I see it tanked, we would cycle in and out more frequently. We would limit fasting. We would limit these stressors until we build it back up.
All right. So listening to the body, its stress response, if it can handle significantly reducing carbs, then we would do that. We find that when women drop into menopause, their ability to tolerate carbs decreases, would you say?
Yes, they become more insulin resistant.
Mhm. So in general, we need to continue to live in a reduced carbohydrate lifestyle more so when we're in menopause versus not.
Exactly. Yeah, and it could be low carb. It doesn't have to be keto. Low carb could be 100 grams of carbs per day, and it's not going to necessarily get you into ketosis. But compared to the 300 grams of carbs per day most people eat, it's pretty damn good.
So for you personally, what do you eat in a day? And do you cycle in and out of ketosis? What do you follow yourself?
Yeah, so it's always changing for me. I like to con- continuously change things up. I like to keep the body adapting and guessing. I think that's where you continuously get results. I just came off of a 90-day carnivore experience where I did the carnivore diet for 90 days. And
How was
I
that?
didn't plan on doing it for 90 days, actually. I tend to do carnivore for 30 days. I've done it for 45 days max, once or twice a year as a reset. This
Okay.
time around, I said I was going to do it for 30 days, and the goal was to create some content from it. So I said I'm going to do a whole bunch of lab work on day one, which I did, a full comprehensive panel from LabCorp that retails for 3,500. I did a stool test. I put on a continuous glucose monitor, and I said I was going to do 30 days and do all the retesting on day 30.
Okay.
But I found myself really busy the last 90 days, and I was moving, I was traveling, I was speaking, and I didn't have time. I didn't make time to retest. So I kept saying, okay, I'll go to 45 days. Okay, I'll go to 60 days. And then I ended up going 90 days. I'm like, I got to break it now. This is longer than I teach people to do it. And on day 90, I retested everything. I did my labs, I did the stool test, and I'm looking at my Aura Ring stats before and after. And I got to say, like, I felt incredible during the 90 days. I felt really good. Mental clarity was improved. My sleep ring, my Aura Ring showed that I had more deep sleep, more REM sleep, better HRV, lowered resting heart rate. My awake time was lessened, so I spent less time waking up at night. And I just got the labs back too, which is interesting. So I could share a little bit about that. But I'm waiting on the stool test results for the day 90, and then I'm going to put it all together in a video.
And I can't wait to see that. Will you share? Will you give us a little snapshot?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So my labs look pretty good on day one, just because I live a pretty healthy lifestyle. I do all the things Ashley teaches, right? So my labs look pretty good. My inflammatory markers were all good on day one. C-reactive protein was good. Homocysteine was good. The thyroid markers look good. My insulin was good. So what was interesting, the most interesting thing on the labs before and after the day one versus day 90 was my lipid panel. And this is the thing, this is probably the main reason why I wanted to do it, because we've been brainwashed to believe that total LDL is bad for you. High cholesterol is bad for you. Eating all this meat and saturated fat is bad for you. But is it really the case? So my total cholesterol actually shot up really high. It went over 400 on day 90.
Wow.
400. And my LDL, total LDL, went to 350. Okay.
Wow.
But here's the thing. I also got my LDL particle sizes done. So I did an NMR test, nuclear magnetic resonance, which looks at the two different patterns of LDL. The small dense, which is problematic and correlated, not just correlated, but it has shown that if you have too much of these small dense LDL particles, it'll increase your risk of heart disease. Then I also got the large and fluffy patterns, which is the pattern A, done as well, which has been shown to actually improve the immune system and help with different hormones and not be problematic. The majority of my LDL particles were from the large and fluffy. When I looked at the range of the small, dense LDL, I was actually in the optimal range. It was a small percentage. So that compared to my inflammatory markers and my triglycerides being really, really good, my fasting insulin being 3.2, I would say that I'm at low risk. But here's what I'm going to do to just make this even more concrete for people who or want more data. I'm going to go get a calcium artery scan done, a calcium score done on my arteries, which is $100 out of pocket. Everybody should do it. It's going to show if I have any calcium built up in my arteries, right? So I'm going to look at the markers, look at my calcium score, and then I'm going to present it all on a YouTube video on my Keto Camp YouTube channel and let people make their own decision on what the conclusions is.
Why do you think that those numbers skyrocketed for you?
I think it skyrocketed because I was eating so much more saturated fat, a lot of red meat, and my body was just running off of fat. I had no carbs in 90 days. I was just burning fat. My body was oxidizing a lot of fat. But the fat I was eating was high quality. I was not doing seed oils. I was not doing conventionally raised cows, et cetera. I think if I did it that way, I would have seen high, small, dense LDL particles. I would have seen a bad effect happen there.
There are some people who think that any type of elevated LDL is not good for heart health. What do you think about that? Even if they're light, big and fluffy, that they're better than the small, dense, irritable type, but they're still not good. It's still just total is all that matters. What do you think about that?
I think there's relevance to that, but we have to look at the full picture. We have to look at inflammatory markers, A1C, insulin, a calcium score, and then you could see if it is problematic or not. If somebody had my markers, let's say that my exact markers with the high LDL, but the majority of it being the large and fluffy, but if I had high homocysteine levels, high C-reactive protein levels, high insulin, I would be concerned. But my C-reactive protein was 0.55. And the optimal range is 1.0 or below. I'm 0.55. And that's actually used as a marker from conventional doctors to assess cardiovascular risk. And I'm optimal there. I was optimal day 1, optimal day 90. My homocysteine was optimal. My fasting insulin was optimal. My A1C was optimal. So looking at the full picture, I'm not concerned, but I'm going to also get the scan done to see if there's any calcium built up in my arteries.
Yeah. So if someone was following this diet and they got the calcium arterial scan and it was elevated and they had high any type of LDL, then would you say that potentially that's not the best diet for them?
For sure. Yeah. You want a 0 on that scan. You don't want anything more than that.
Yeah. And I think in my readings and understanding, maybe 20% of us are sensitive to saturated fat intake. And that doesn't mean that we can't follow a higher fat diet, but potentially the fat shouldn't come all from saturated fat. Have you heard about that?
Mine was extreme. My experiment was extreme. It's not something that I recommend everybody do, but I wanted to just do it all for the sake of content.
Well, and some people do really well on the carnivore diet. You know, I interviewed Dr. Ken Berry, who's great. And I know he's helped probably, a million people improve their health through following a carnivore-like diet. So I definitely think there's something to that.
Yeah, I love Ken. I love the carnivore diet too. I don't agree with Ken in terms of like we should be doing it long term. He also thinks we should be doing ketosis long term. I don't agree about that either. Mm-hmm. But I love carnivore. I think it's a great tool. And a lot of people who have autoimmune conditions could really use that tool. It'll benefit them.
When people follow the ketogenic diet and they witness changes in thyroid, let's say their thyroid function or the test results show that their thyroid function is struggling or suffering, why is that? What's happening there?
Well, it depends on how long they do it. If they're doing, let's give an example of, if they're doing it long term, what's going to happen is, number one, it's a stress to the body to be in continuous ketosis, and then it's going to reverse T3. This is what I've seen. And then with that, you're not going to get the T3 into the cell. It's going to block it. So that's the problem there. But let's say it's short term. What we will see sometimes is the T3, free T3 could drop short term with keto. But here's the thing. The human body is doing this for a very smart reason. The innate intelligence is doing this because before, the cells might have been inflamed. You might have needed more T3 to get into the cell. But now that you're reversing you're lowering your inflammation, you need less of the hormone to get in. That's the logical explanation to me. But with long-term, it's different. Because with chronically low levels of insulin, like long-term keto or long-term carnivore or excessive fasting, insulin is actually needed to make that conversion from T4 inactive thyroid to T3. And when you have chronically low levels of insulin, that conversion doesn't happen effectively. And that can be problematic, but that's long-term ketosis. Mm-hmm. Short-term, it's not an issue.
Yeah, the normal blood tests and ranges are looking at folks who aren't necessarily very healthy, right? And are eating a very high carbohydrate, standard American diet. So the fact that we go off all of these ranges, the ranges themselves are a bit skewed and not in our health favor. Would you agree with that?
100%. Yeah, it's the average of everybody who's done those tests. And we don't want to be the average of people who've done the tests because the average of most people are sick. They're unhealthy. We don't want to be the average. There's a functional range and then there's a standard reference range.
Mm-hmm. So now that you go off the carnivore diet, Ben, what are you eating? Are you back to eating lots of grains and soda and all of these things. What does your diet look like now? Kentucky
Yeah,
Fried Chicken?
I'm not doing that.
I know.
So right now, what I'm doing is Monday through Friday, I'm doing ketosis. I'm in ketosis, and
Okay.
I'm doing about an 18-hour fast daily. And then on the weekends, I am not practicing much fasting, and what I call flexing. So I'm actually increasing my carbs over 100 to 150 grams of healthy carbs, though. So I'm flexing out, and then Monday I go back into ketosis through Friday. So yeah, I'm sticking to that right now, but that'll change in the future, I'm sure.
Mhm. And where do you get your healthy carbs?
Fruit and white rice. I do really well with fruit and white rice.
What do
That's the
you?
majority of where I'm getting my carbs. Also, from sweet potatoes, yams. I like that as well, but I don't do well with beans personally. So it's majority is white rice and fruit.
What about your veggies? Are you a fan of veggies, or do they not do well with your digestive system?
Certain veggies I can tolerate. Low oxalate veggies I can tolerate. So I can do things like mushrooms and arugula and broccoli and Brussels sprouts. I'm okay with that personally. But if I have spinach or kale or anything that's really higher in oxalates, I don't do well with that.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. A lot of us think that all veggies are good and they should be good for the body, but we're all very different in what we tolerate. So if you listening out there, you feel like you eat some vegetables and they just don't do well with your system, you don't have to feel bad about not including them as a part of your diet, right?
So true. Yeah, we're all different. And that's where it comes to paying attention to how you feel, your symptoms. We've been brainwashed, Ashley, to believe that symptoms are bad and we should hate symptoms and we should mask them with medication or whatever. But symptoms are a gift. They're a gift from the innate intelligence. It's your body's check engine light. It's communicating to you. So if you had almonds, if you had spinach, if you had kale, which are all high in oxalates, and that day you got brain fog, maybe you had a headache, some joint pain, you didn't sleep well, like thank God you have the symptoms because it showed you, hey, maybe you shouldn't have these foods right now. But if you had those foods and you felt incredible, then you have identified those foods as being good for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I was looking at your social media, Instagram, which everyone listening to this should go follow Ben on Instagram. And you had in your bio that your goal, one of your goals is to impact 1 million diabetics and help reverse diabetes. I'd love to hear from you. That's one of my personal goals as well, is to help people get rid of this condition that we call a chronic progressive condition that really frustrates me because it's not chronic. It doesn't have to be progressive. And really, no one needs to have type 2 diabetes. Yet it's impacting hundreds of millions of people. So I'd love for you to share with us, what are the steps to start reversing type 2 diabetes? If someone's listening to this and they have type 2 diabetes, what would you advise them to do?
Yeah, I love the question. I love that we both share the mission. It's there's God knows there's enough people that they need both our missions here, and we need more people to stand up and have the mission too. That is the goal. That is my 10-year goal, to reverse type 2 diabetes in 1 million people. And we're going to actually keep track of all 1 million people with lab work and verify it. So when we think Dr. Jason Fung, let me start there. He's incredible, right? Dr. Jason Fung.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, a diabetes code, obesity code. He's a good friend of mine, him and Megan Ramos. I love them. He has a great analogy about diabetes and what happens when we eat high carbs, high palatable foods, and we get these constant glucose and insulin spikes throughout the years, which develop into type 2 diabetes. The analogy that he gives is if you put on a pair of headphones and you plug it into your phone and you start listening to music with the headphones on your head, and you listen to your favorite musician and you're listening to that musician, let's say at 50% volume, but you never take a break from listening to the music. 24/7, you're listening to that music at 50% volume. After a few weeks, you're going to feel like that volume doesn't sound the same. It sounds like the volume has decreased. So I'm going to increase it from 50% volume to 60% volume. So you do that. After a few weeks, you don't take a break, it's going to do the same thing. You're going to feel like you're losing the hearing there. So you're going to increase the volume, and you keep doing this. After a few months, maybe years, you're going to be at 100% volume. That music is going to be shouting at your ears. And you ask the question, okay, what's happening here? You're going deaf to the music. Well, with eating high carbs, high sugar foods, and eating it frequently, Same thing is happening to our receptor sites. It can't hear the message of insulin. And then we become deaf to the screams of insulin, which means you're insulin resistant, which leads to type 2 diabetes. So if that's the cause, that means the solution is to dial down the music, stop listening at a loud volume, and stop listening so frequently, AKA lower your carbs and practice intermittent fasting. And that's where we see so many studies out there that show what keto, what fasting, with other modalities can do to reverse type 2 diabetes. Like you said, Ashley, it is not a progressive chronic disease. That is a whole bunch of crap. And the reason they have fed us that crap is because when you put people on a medication and tell them you can't reverse it, you make a lot of money from that person. It doesn't cure them. And this happened with my dad. He ended up dying from the complications of type 2 diabetes in 2014. And the same thing happened with him. We never had the conversation about what we can do. What can we do to reverse his diabetes? We never had that conversation. It was just about managing it. He got worse. He suffered a stroke. He became paralyzed. He ended up dying. And that's where I really became passionate about figuring out how do we overcome this so people don't have to suffer. And we have the solution. So type 2 diabetes can be reversed. It could happen fairly easily in a matter of weeks to months, sometimes years, depending on how severe it is. But you have the control. One of the things we have in common, Ashley, and this is we're a threat to big pharma. And what we're doing is we're stripping the power away from big pharma, from big food and big government, and we're giving it back to the people with conversations like this and the work that we do, because the power is within us. The body is built to be self-healing. We just got to remove the interference. So type 2 diabetes can be reversed. It can happen fairly quickly. You just got to know what to do. And that's what we both teach and we're passionate about.
Yeah, I just recorded a solo episode about reversing prediabetes and type 2 diabetes. And I just had a quick look at some client charts. And I had 20 clients reverse their type 2 diabetes, and the average time span was 16 weeks.
Oh.
People would see changes right away. And have you experienced that? I mean, how quickly can people experience improvements? And then from your clinical experience, when do you see people actually start to just not have to depend on medication anymore and are quote unquote no longer diabetic?
Yeah, well, first of all, that's awesome. Like, you're doing amazing work. 20 people, 16 weeks, like that.
16 weeks.
And you think about it, they were probably diabetic for years. And we know that it takes about 14 years to even be diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. Meanwhile, you're insulin resistant. So think about that, probably 10, 20, 30 years, these people, and then 16 weeks, they reverse it. That's incredible. So I mean, I've seen that too how quickly, the question was, how quickly can you see a difference?
Yeah.
You could see a difference in 7 days. You could see a difference within 3 days in terms of your blood sugar. Now, it depends on how severe and how much medication they're on, and you want to be very careful and work with your prescribing doctor to start lowering your dosage, whether it's insulin or whatever blood sugar reducing med you're taking, as you're getting healthier, because you don't want to go hypoglycemic, right?
Yeah.
But you will see a change in a matter of days. You practice keto or fasting or variation of it, in a matter of days, you'll see better blood sugar levels. And then you can start adjusting your meds with your doctor at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So small changes, I know they might feel big, but really we can make small changes and see significant improvements in our health quickly.
That's the cool thing about it. Even though you've done it for so many years, so much damage, the body is so smart and sophisticated. It will adapt. It truly will.
Yeah, it wants to work for you if you let it.
Yes.
So we're talking about diabetes. While we're on the topic, how do you feel about Ozempic, Wegovy, tirzepatide? What are your thoughts on these diabetic drugs for weight loss support?
Again, I always love using the innate intelligence as my inner physician, as my guiding post. With these different peptides and different medications that are very popular these days, they're showing some short-term benefits, similar to like cutting calories, right? If you cut calories, you'll see some short-term benefits. But what's going to happen long-term? Number one, we don't know. Number two, there's some evidence showing that the weight that is lost is actually not body fat. It's actually other parts of your body, like muscle loss and different cartilage being lost. So look, I just love the human body's innate intelligence as the way to do things. And these are blocking in a way the innate intelligence from doing its job. It could be done naturally. It can be done in different methods. I don't think we need to rely on these medications, whatever it is, these peptides that are out there. I think there's a better way. I know there's a better way. The challenge that we're up against, Ashley, I want to hear your thoughts on them too. But the challenge we're up against is that it's so easy to just tell people to take this pill, take this injection, and it's going to help with your blood sugar. It's going to help with your diabetes versus doing the work and eating whole foods and staying away from seed oils and limiting your carbs. It's an easy thing to do, but easy is not the solution here. Sometimes you got to do the hard things so your life is actually easier later on versus doing the easy things and it makes your life harder later on. But I want to hear your thoughts on them.
I mean, I always go back to my mission, and my mission is to empower people to step up, better their lives, and become self-sufficient. And these drugs just don't allow us to be self-sufficient. They're not empowering, and that's one of my biggest problems with it. And I know I'm probably a bit biased, similar to you, Ben. We see people drop weight without the need of these things. We see them empowered and confident and knowing they can go anywhere in the world and not need any kind of medication to create some kind of outcome. They can do it on their own. And the body is beautiful and it can heal itself and it can work for you. And so I see people drop 30 pounds to 250 pounds without any kind of surgery or medication. So I understand that it can be a helpful tool for some people who might not be open to changing their lifestyle and doing the work. I get that, and I can see it kind of there. Although I bet if I sat with them, I could motivate them to do the work, maybe, or I not just me, but if they really had the compassion and the love, I think they could see in themselves that they can make these changes if they had the right support. So man, I just am a fighter for the underdog. I'm a fighter for someone who feels that they can't do it, that they don't deserve it, and that they can do it on their own. So that's my real grief with the drugs is that. And like you said, we're finding if we're not very cautious, we're dropping a lot of muscle mass. So while we might weigh less on the scale, it's not improving the body composition in the way that we need to, especially as we age.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Ashley. I sure am. The problem with it is that they're chasing the symptom still. Right? Being overweight is a symptom. It's a weight symptom, not a weight problem. So you don't lose weight to get healthy. You get healthy to lose weight. Is Ozempic and these different peptides actually helping you get healthy? I don't think so. But if you actually do the work and get healthy, then the weight loss is a side effect. It's just a byproduct of your metabolism working better. And that is sustainable. There's no long-term effects there. You don't have to worry about different things popping up later on in life. It's the same thing with my guy friends who are on testosterone replacement therapy. And don't get me wrong, there's always a time and place for hormone therapy. There really is, especially for women but even for men, but not when a guy's 35 years old or 40 years old or 45 years old. And it's just a shortcut to feel better and perform better short term, but they're not thinking about the long-term effect. And that is what we have in common. We're thinking about more of the long-term effects of different things that we do. I always want to explore natural ways for the body to do it versus relying on something exogenously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand that. So when I was studying for our time together, I looked at all the stuff that you're doing from a biohacking perspective and everything that you focus on for longevity. And I was hoping that you would share with us, if someone's new into biohacking, what is that? And what would be maybe the top 5 things that really, I guess, what is the minimum effective dose when it comes to biohacking? What would be the 5 things that someone could start with if they're new into this area that you think really can move the dial on our overall health?
Yeah, definitely happy to answer that. Biohacking to me is getting more results with less effort, especially as it pertains to your health. So there's different biohacks we can do to accelerate healing, to lower inflammation, to perform better, to lose weight, etc. And I'll share my top 5. I'll share some that you would have to pay for and then some that are free. So I'll mix both. But before I share it, I think it's important because here's what I see in the biohacking space. And it's biohacking is becoming more popular. Different things that I'll share about are becoming more popular. And I love all of them. I have a whole bunch of these modalities that I do. But we always have to view these modalities in the perspective of is your body adapting to the stress? Because what biohacking tools and devices and gadgets or whatever it is have in common, they all stress your body. But again, stress is only bad when your body doesn't adapt to it. So, are you adapting to the stress? If you're not adapting, you're violating the adaptation principle. It's called the principle of hormesis. And how do you know if you're violating it? You pay attention to how you feel the rest of the day. So, I'll give the example. I'll give the top 5 here, and then I'll share what I mean by how you feel the rest of the day. So, let's start with 3 that are paid, and then 2, we'll end with 2 free ones. The first one that is a paid one, unless you find a cold body of water, is cold therapy, cold plunging. And I have myself a plunge in my backyard here. I actually did this morning, 2-minute plunge before I worked out. And what happens when you put yourself into cold therapy, a cold body of water, cold shower, a cold lake, or whatever it is, or cryotherapy, your body thinks you're dying, and your mitochondria have to adapt to the stress, kind of like ketosis, but more severe. And
Mhm.
with that, you get an regulation in neuroepinephrine, 250% increase in dopamine. You have human growth hormone surge, and your body just adapts to the stress. And then you get out, and then you cool down, or warm up, I should say. And then you should feel good the rest of the day. If you did the right amount of temperature and the right amount of duration, you should feel better the rest of the day. If you feel wiped out the rest of the day, you did too much, it was too cold, and you got to start very, very slow. So 3 minutes on average is what most people say to do. That is bogus. It's dependent on how healthy that person is. Let's get that straight. But cold plunging is great when you do it the right way. You also don't want to do it after exercise because it blocks innate intelligence. It blocks the healing from the workout. You want to do it before you work out or away from a workout. Okay, second, I would say red light therapy, photobiomodulation. I'm a big fan of red light therapy. I use it often. I have a panel right here in my office. I have different straps and devices and face masks with red light. Photobiomodulation is a great way to get near infrared light into your mitochondria, helps with collagen production, helps with inflammation, helps with recovery from a workout, helps with energy production. But again, more is not better. So for me, 20 minutes a day is the optimal dose, but it's incredible. The third one is going to be, let's see, a paid one. Probably sauna. So sauna is another stress. It's a heat therapy. It activates heat shock proteins versus the cold therapy and cold shock proteins. But again, stresses the mitochondria, helps with blood flow, helps with the immune system. A lot of great things happen as long as you do the right temperature and the right duration. So you want to feel better after a sauna. And then you could go back and forth, cold plunge sauna. This is called hot, cold contrast. But again, you want to feel better the rest of the day. So start low and slow. So those are the 3 paid. The 2 that are free, I would say number 4, the 4th tip would be a free tip on biohacking. I would say earthing/grounding outside. So getting sunshine and then also putting your feet on the earth, whether it is sand, dirt, grass, barefoot on there. We are electrical beings, and the earth is highly charged because of all of the thunderstorms and the lightning strikes, and there is an electric charge on the earth. And when we put our feet or our hands on the earth, we get this electrical discharge. It's like taking a handful of antioxidants. It thins the blood. It helps to deal with the impact we get from Wi-Fi and 5G and all the signals that are creating thick viscosity, thick blood. So we want to thin that out. And it's like taking a handful of antioxidants, and bonus points if you do it outside with the sun and get that vitamin D up and just get all the benefits from the sunshine exposure. The 5th biohack is my favorite one. It's a free biohack, but it's actually more powerful than the previous biohacks I just shared. It's a supplement that you take. It's called vitamin G, and this supplement has been proven to lower your A1C, to lower your blood pressure levels. Dr. Joe Dispenza has done research on individuals who take vitamin G, and he has seen their cortisol levels go down, their IgA levels go up, which protects your immune system, and he's seen 1,200 chemical reactions take place in the brain as soon as they take it. He has seen GABA, serotonin, oxytocin, dopamine, and all these amazing chemicals increase when you take vitamin G. So vitamin G is not a supplement that you could buy on Amazon or the Vitamin Shop. It's not on my store. It is the practice of gratitude. It is feeling grateful. I call it vitamin G. And all the studies I just shared are studies on gratitude. It rewires your brain. And when you start to shift into gratitude and then you start to appreciate things, you get more things to appreciate. Universal law, what you appreciate. So vitamin G is the most powerful supplement, the greatest biohack in the world. There's no upper limit on it. It's free. You can take it whenever you want and you get an immediate benefit.
Man, I love that. Great, great suggestions and recommendations. I listened to Joe Dispenza meditation. He meditates with me with his audios probably, I don't know, 85% of the year. Sometimes I'll sit with myself and meditate, but I really love to follow his guiding meditations. And
that's awesome that you do that.
Yeah. It's the one thing I give myself is trying to give myself a few minutes in the morning and not think. It's hard.
I love that you do that. Yeah, it is, especially as an entrepreneur, right? We have our activities and things we want to get to, but
that's right.
The morning time is the best way to do that. The best time to do that, because that's when the subconscious mind is the most impressionable.
So really quickly, I have a few questions on your 5 suggestions. With the cold plunge, do we get the same benefit from a cold shower if we don't have a plunge available?
Depends on where you live. If you're in Miami, like me, no, it doesn't get cold enough.
That's too warm.
Yeah. So 59 degrees or less is where the studies show you get a benefit. So you could test your water, but you want to make sure it's actually cold.
Okay, great. For the red light, any specific brands? I know there are so many brands out there. Some are better quality than others. Anything that you suggest?
Yeah, there's a lot of good ones out there. I personally have a Bond Charge. They're great. Joovv is great. There's some other ones out there that I can't think of, but I would say this: don't just go on Amazon and get any cheap red light. It's not the same thing. Like, get a credible company. I personally use Bond Charge. They have panels. They have little mini devices. They have the mask. So that's one. And then Joovv is also a good one. I don't know if you have another suggestion for red light.
No, I like those. I think there's one also called Mito Red.
Yeah,
and I've heard
one's good too.
Good reviews on. Yes. Okay, great. With the sauna, dry sauna versus infrared, or both are great?
Yeah, they're both great. There's research on both different sort of benefits. The one I'm getting is infrared. That's the one I went for. I believe from my research, and I might be wrong, I believe that dry sauna gets hotter, at least the one that I'm getting. Their dry sauna version might get, like, the temperature might go higher, but you don't get the infrared benefit. So I figured it'll be hot, but I want the infrared. So I went with that, even though it's not as hot as the dry sauna.
Great. Grounding out in the sun. Any specific amount of time that we should be out there? More the better, at least 10, 15 minutes, something like that?
I interviewed Clint Ober many years ago, who has an earthing documentary called Earthing. Really, really good. Earthing.com. They have a whole bunch of different grounding devices and pillows and different things. I asked him that question, and I believe his answer was 60 minutes a day. And it doesn't have to be in one session. It could be 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes later. But you want to get about, yeah, it is. So what I typically do is I multitask when I'm outside grounding. So it helps me.
If I went outside to ground right now, Ben, I think it's 19 degrees. So my feet would freeze to the ground. But, no excuses.
Yeah. But you could also get a grounding mat or a PEMF mat. So that's another biohack in the biohack. So you could do that. Yeah.
Yep. All right. Last question for you, Ben. I've been following you. I think you moved because you had mold in your house. Is that right? And I think mold is a big deal. We recently had my son tested because he had some odd symptoms going on, and it was mold. So will you share with us just a little bit about how did you even check for mold? And it was that big of a deal that you actually moved homes.
Yeah. I've experienced mold illness before in 2018 at my old home. I live in Florida. It's everywhere in Florida, but it's everywhere in general. And it destroyed my health back then. And back then, I also had 8 fillings in my mouth. I lived in a moldy home, doing CrossFit excessively and fasting. It was not... I was not adapting to those stressors.
Your adrenals didn't like you.
My adrenals did not like it. They were pissed off at me. So I got out of that exposure, and I got the fillings out, did detox and all that. And then me and my fiance moved into this incredible townhouse where actually that's where like Mark Sisson went over. I interviewed him. I built out this amazing studio. And, a few months into it, I started to notice that the townhouse had a unique smell, like a musty smell.
Yeah.
And I kept asking my fiance, I'm like, Natasha, do you smell that? Like when we walk in from walking outside to walking in, do you smell that? And she kept telling me no. And then I noticed our washer dryer had a unique smell with our clothes. I'm like, it smells off. But anyways, we just moved in. I didn't want to think it was mold because we had built out the studio. Everything was there. Then about 4 months into it, my fiance started to get these sinus infections and migraines. And I know those are two very common symptoms from mold exposure. So a few days after that, I said, I got to find out if there's mold here. Unfortunately, we probably do, and we'll make a decision, but I need to know. So I emailed a good friend of mine named Ryan Blazer. He has a company called Test My Home, and he's a world-renowned home biologist, building biologist. And I met him through my mentor, Dr. Pompa. I've seen him at conferences, and I had his email, and I texted him. I let him know, I think I have mold. This is what my fiance is dealing with. He lives in Idaho. And then he messaged me back, oh, perfect. I'm actually in West Palm Beach this week.
No way.
And I could drive down to you today if you're available. He never comes to Florida. That was his first time in Florida. He happened to be there that same morning, right? Amazing. So he came over that same day. He had all this testing kits and different devices, and he discovered mold everywhere, Ashley. In all of our bathrooms, we had 3 bathrooms. All of the rooms, we had 4 bedrooms, and the HVAC upstairs, downstairs, everywhere. Mold everywhere. So he was like, you got to take care of this. And I said, yes, we got to take care of this. I was going to actually stay there and remediate and just stay somewhere temporarily. But the real reason we moved is a crazier reason. He had a device that he was going around that was testing for different contaminants, an air meter machine or air quality meter. And he opened up my back door, and we were living right behind this huge preserve, these mangroves. And it's actually one of the reasons why we moved there, because it was beautiful.
Yeah.
But the mangroves were emitting high amounts of hydrogen sulfide, which is a toxic gas that was coming right into our unit. So we couldn't even open up the windows to air out the mold, because that was probably worse than the mold. And we can't do anything about that environment outside. So that was the reason we ended up saying, we got to get the hell out of here. We immediately started looking at houses, and we got out. And thank God, the new place, no hydrogen sulfide, no mold. We've tested. I even had the whole place sprayed and fogged before we moved in. And we brought in all our stuff before as well to get that fogged. And now we're in a safe place. Thank God.
Do you guys feel better?
Yeah, so much better. My fiance's sinuses went away. Our cats, or one of our cats, was dealing with sinus issues. That went away too. So yeah.
So before you move somewhere, get the house tested for mold. Is that what you've learned from this scenario?
Oh, yes. And that's an important lesson for everybody. Maybe test your home now if you feel off, or if you're moving somewhere, like get it tested. The companies that I use is testmyhome.com or puremaintenance.com. Ashley might have recommendations too, but get it tested, please.
Yeah, I agree with you. Thank you so much, Ben. Anything else that you would like to share with us?
You said it earlier. The mindset is the most important thing. So work on that first. And what comes before that actually is your environment, because your environment, I said it earlier, but I'll give it a good end here. Your environment determines your thoughts and your beliefs. Your thoughts and your beliefs determine your habits and your actions. Your habits and your actions determine your results. Your results end up determining your destiny. So it goes all the way back to your environment. If you have a toxic environment, you have toxic beliefs, self-limiting beliefs, bad behaviors, bad results, and a poor life at the end of the day. And we don't want that for anybody. So if you change your environment, you change your thoughts, you change your actions, you change your results. So do an audit on your environment. Stop watching the news. Stop watching things that are toxic. Stop scrolling on social media. Set boundaries with your friends and your family. Clean up the environment. It'll help you have better thoughts, make better decisions, and everything else will be so much easier for you.
Thank you, Ben. Where can people follow you?
benazati.com is my website, and it has everything from my Keto Camp podcast to the YouTube channel. You can listen to Ashley's interview that was on my show as well. So benazati.com.
Thank you so much, Ben. I appreciate your time.
Appreciate you, Ashley. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did. So many actionable steps that we can take away and implement immediately to see positive change. If you're listening to this on a podcast platform, please leave a review and subscribe. If you are watching this on YouTube, please drop a comment below. Let me know what you think about this. If you have any questions on any of the information that Ben shared with us today, please subscribe. It impacts the algorithm so that we can positively impact more people. Remember, you've got to step up to make the change. Lead with your heart, train your mind, and do not negotiate with your body. I'll see you next time.